The first time I heard the echo, I thought it was my own voice screaming back at me, but I hadn't screamed. Yet. I moved back to Black Hollow that September, when the leaves had just begun to turn, and the mountains closed in like teeth around the valley. My father's cabin waited at the end of a rutted dirt road, gray wood, sagging roof, windows blind with dust. Inside, it smelled of cold ashes, damp timber, and the faint, ghostly trace of old pipe smoke. My father's only comfort after Mom died. I wasn't here to grieve him. Not really. I was here because I couldn't leave his questions buried with him. The first night, the wind sang through the trees like something alive. Branches scraped the walls. I curled in his old armchair, a bottle of whiskey half empty on the table beside me. I told myself I'd patch the roof, clean the place listed for sale before the snow. I dozed, half drunk, half listening. That's when I heard it. A whisper. My name, breathed from the shadows by a voice I didn't know. The next morning I blamed the wind, the whiskey, maybe both. But when night fell again, the whisper came back thicker this time, like someone beneath the floorboards calling up through the old oak planks. I tore through the pantry until I found it, a rusted iron ring hidden under warped linoleum. I lifted it. The dark beneath smelled like cold stone and secrets. I didn't go down then, not yet. I needed answers. In town, I found Ellen at the tiny grocery. She had soft eyes, an edge in her voice when she asked if I was staying in the cabin. When I told her about the noises, she went quiet. Finally, she said, "Your father always said the hollow remembers. Down there, the walls don't just echo voices, they keep them." She laughed like it was a joke, but her hands were trembling when she gave me my change. I told myself I wouldn't open it. But the third night, when the knocking came, 3 sharp raps, then silence, I couldn't help it. I opened the trapdoor. A ladder, eaten with rust, led down into pitch black. My phone's flashlight barely touched the walls. Every step down was colder. The air tasted of wet stone and something sweet and rotten. I told myself I'd just look, just to prove there was nothing to fear. I was wrong. At the bottom, I found an old rail line, wooden beams disappearing into darkness. On the walls, old miners' wards scratched into stone, runes, prayers, warnings. I saw my father's writing, crude charcoal slashes. Don't listen. I pressed on. I had to know. The corridor opened into a chamber, barrels crusted with wax, rusted chains bolted to stone. In the center, a pit gaped open, ringed with rotting timbers. From that pit rose the echo. Not a whisper this time. Something happened.
The first time I heard the echo, I thought it was my own voice screaming back at me. But I hadn't screamed. Yet. It was late September when I moved back to Black Hollow, a nowhere place carved into the Appalachians, buried under mist and half-forgotten mining roads. My father left me the cabin when he died. I hadn't seen him in 15 years, but his lawyer's letter felt like a hook I couldn't wriggle free from. I told myself I'd sell the place, patch up the roof, clear out his things, put it on the market before the first snow. But as soon as I crossed the threshold with its smell of cedar rot and cold ashes, I knew I'd stay at least until I understood why he'd stayed. The first night was worse than I expected. The wind had that animal whine, rattling the old shutters like teeth clacking. The fireplace refused to light. I sat in my father's old armchair, blanket around my shoulders, sipping whiskey to quiet the drafts in my head. That's when I heard it. Faint at first, a low groan like floorboards settling, then a murmur, deep under the crackle of branches outside, my name. It wasn't my father's voice, or my own echo in the empty house. It was a voice I didn't recognize, soft as breath against my ear. "Jacob." I jolted upright. The whiskey sloshed over my hand. I called out, "Who's there?" like an idiot, as if the walls would answer. Silence swallowed my words. The clock on the mantel kept ticking, but the wind outside had stopped. The trees outside the window were perfectly still, like they were listening.
Knock, knock, knock. I opened the trapdoor. Act 3. The Hollow's Mouth. The air that rose up smelled ancient. Cold stone, wet earth, and something fouler beneath it all, like rotting flowers. I held my phone's flashlight over the opening. A rusted ladder disappearing into black. The first rung groaned under my weight. I told myself I'd just look, just prove to myself there was nothing down there. I didn't believe it even then. The shaft opened into a narrow corridor of hewn stone. My boots scraped loose gravel into puddles that glowed under the beam. The walls were slick, pulsing with moisture. Every sound echoed back, my breath, my heartbeat, the shuffle of my steps. And underneath it all, a whisper that never came from my lips. "Jacob," it called from deeper in. I found the old rails first, wooden beams half swallowed by mud, leading deeper than I could see. I followed them. What else could I do? I passed markings on the walls, sigils carved by miners desperate to ward off cave-ins, or worse. My father's handwriting, scratched into the rock in jagged charcoal. "Don't listen." The whisper grew louder the farther I went. Sometimes it sounded like my mother, sometimes my own voice from years ago, angry, broken, grieving. Then, just when I thought I'd turn back, I saw the room, a hollowed-out chamber, candles melted into lumps on rusted barrels, chains bolted to the wall, and in the center, a pit, a shaft within the shaft, ringed with rotted timber beams. The echo rose from it, cold and wet, brushing my skin like fingers. I crawled to the edge, stomach pressed to the damp stone. I peered down. There was something moving in the black.
Act 4. What crawls out?
It didn't speak in words, not really. More like it pressed memories into my head. My father's voice pleading with me to stay away. The hush of my mother's last breath in the hospital bed, my own screams when I found her. It knew me, every scar, every regret. And it was hungry. The walls around the pit trembled, the timber creaked. I felt it beneath my palms, something shifting, coiling up like a snake waking in winter. I stumbled back just as a hand, gray and slick, human but not, reached over the edge. Another hand, a face blind and glistening, like something born without ever seeing the sun. It pulled itself up, inch by inch, wet skin sliding over stone, mouth working in silence until it found my name again. Jacob. I ran blind through the tunnels, scraping my hands raw on rock and iron. I swear it followed, without sound, just a pressure behind my ribs pushing me faster. When I burst through the trapdoor, dawn was breaking in the kitchen. Birds sang as if nothing had changed. I slammed the trap shut, pushed the fridge over it, sat against the counter, gasping until my vision blurred. It hasn't knocked since, but some nights when the wind dies, I hear the floorboards sigh, a low, hungry echo rising through the old wood. Sometimes I think about leaving, selling the cabin, burning it to the ground. But I can't, not yet. Because the thing under Black Hollow knows my name, and part of me wants to know its name too.